Chapter 16. Chaos. Ava's heartbeat had increased, and her heart was violently pounding in her chest. Her hands began to shiver, and her feet felt heavy beneath her. Ava thought she was going to collapse from panic, but then she felt her fingers begin gently squeezed by Roland's hand, and that somehow made her feel safe. Act normal. We cannot give them any wrong signal, or else other people might get hurt in a crossfire. Do you understand? Roland whispered as he kept holding on to Ava's hand while they continued walking. Yes. Wait them. How many are there? Ava mumbled. We have one man on our left, the other on our right. And two at our back, Roland replied. The thought of 4 men with guns walking so close by them made Ava's fear resurface again, causing her breathing to become deep and heavy. Hey, calm down. I am not going to allow you to die. Trust me, Roland whispered. I trust you. Ava muttered. She took a deep breath and exhaled. She then put on her game face and turned her focus back on the clothes. Roland, I want that dress. Ava excitedly shouted as she let go of Roland's hand and hugged onto his arm. Let's check it out, Roland replied. Ava pulled him into the boutique. However, Roland stopped now too far from the doorway. What happened? Ava asked out of concern. Nothing. You go pick up the clothes you want, and I will stand guard here, Roland replied. Okay, here. Take this with you. Ava looked at what Roland had placed into her hand. Then she nodded her head and softly smiled at him before leaving him. How can I help you, miss? A lady asked with a stiff expression when Ava approached the desk. I need to pick up a few clothes, Ava said. She then rested the black card on the desk, and immediately the receptionist's attitude towards her changed. Oh my! An unlimited black card. Please come this way, madam. I will show you the best items we have in our store, the receptionist said with a big fat smile on her face. Okay. Ava awkwardly mumbled as she followed the lady. The receptionist took Ava to the back and offered her a seat on a soft sofa. Ava slowly sat down on the couch, feeling a bit awkward from the sudden kind hospitality the lady was displaying. She felt tenser when the lady handed her a glass of champagne. Ava half-heartedly accepted the glass, then set it down on the side table. I will be right back with our store's most luxurious items we have, the receptionist said. Before Ava could object, the lady was gone. When she returned a few minutes later, her hands were full of clothes. These are the best of the best, the receptionist said. Okay, Ava replied. The lady downed the clothes on the space on the sofa. Then she picked up a dress from among them. This is an elegant A-list and backless white dress with a diamond design waistband, the receptionist said. It is stunning. How much does it cost? Ava asked. Well, this dress is one of our most luxurious items. It is worth 3 million. 3. What? Millions. Ava immediately stood up from the sofa with a frown on her face. Is there a problem, madam? The receptionist asked as she watched Ava walk away. Ava did not stop to give an answer. Instead, she continued walking until she met with Roland. Your hands are empty. Do you not like any of the clothes? Roland asked. Number, that is not the problem. Ava hastily asked. Then, what is? It is the price. Just a single dress cost $3 million. I have never bought a worth more than $500 before. Roland smiled at Ava, and that made her confused since she expected him to agree with her, and for them to be leaving the shop. Madam, is there a problem? The receptionist asked. Ava turned around and angrily gazed at the lady. Then she stared back at Roland. Why are you just standing still? Let's go. Ava mumbled. Do you have a problem while the clothes are picked out? The receptionist asked. Number she loves them. Package all of the items you pick out for her. Also, get some lingerie, footwear, and nightwear for her. Roland replied. But the price? Is there something wrong with the cost of the clothes, madam? Not at all. Any amount the items come up to, deduct it from my card. Ava felt enraged by Roland's act since she considered it to be wasteful spending. However, she didn't want to embarrass herself in front of a stranger, so she kept silent. Madam, please follow me to pick out the items of your choice. The receptionist gently said. Ava gave one last mad stare at Roland. Before walking after the lady, when they got to the underwear section, the receptionist stopped walking and turned around to face Ava. How do you know, Sir Roland? Are you guys in a relationship? The lady asked. Ava could see the receptionist's taste for gossip in her gaze, and she felt disgusted. You can ask him this when we get back. Ava replied. Haha, number I am sorry for being nosy. I love my life. Please don't tell him that I asked you such a question. The lady hastily stated with fear in her eyes. Ava nodded her head, and the receptionist let out a sigh of relief. How brutal can Roland be for this poor lady to fear him this much? Ava wondered. Roland kept his back turned to the door. But his killer instinct was active, and he was extremely calculative about the hitmen's next move. A gentle smile appeared on Roland's face when he saw Ava returning with the receptionist holding a bunch of bags. How much do all these cost? Ava asked after she and the lady met with Roland. The receptionist was about to call the cost of all the items when Roland intervened. That doesn't matter, he stated. Ava wasn't happy with the answer, but she kept quiet. I will have the boutique security deliver this to your car, Sir Roland. The receptionist said as she handed over the black card. Okay, Roland replied. He took his card and put it back into his pocket. He then gazed at Ava's serious expression. Are you really going to leave? Roland asked. Ava did not reply. Instead, she walked past Roland and headed outside the boutique. Roland hurriedly followed after Ava, knowing that the hitmen were still out there. I don't know why you will choose to buy a dress that costs that much. Who cares if it got diamonds on them? Ava complained as she kept walking. At that moment, Roland forcefully pulled her towards him and hugged her tightly. Bang! The sound of a gunshot echoed throughout the mall, and the screams of people became loud as the area turned chaotic, with people running everywhere. Chapter 17. An unwanted visitor. Ava squeezed her eyes shut when she heard the loud gunshot sound. Her hands hugged tightly around Roland's body. Are you okay? Ava mumbled. One man down, Roland replied. Ava opened her eyes and saw the gun in Roland's hand. Then she looked at where the gun was pointed and saw a man lying in his blood. Are you stupid? What were you thinking, walking out of the store alone? Do you know how close to death you were just now? Roland lashed out. I am sorry, Ava replied. Roland felt Ava's hands tremble, and his anger immediately subsided a bit. Don't move. We still have 3 men unaccounted for, Roland calmly said. People were running by them and screamed, but he remained focused as he surveyed the crowd for his targets. Got you, Roland mumbled. He directed his gun to the west side of the mall, and before the hitman could get the chance to pull his trigger, a bullet had already pierced through his heart. 2 down and 2 more to go, Roland said with a smile on his face. Ava caught a glance of that smile when she gazed up at Roland, and she felt afraid. Between the hitman and Roland, she could tell anymore who was dangerous. Suddenly, Ava felt her body being swung along with Roland as he took a rushed step towards the right. And a second did not pass when a bullet flew past them and hit directly into a pillar. Ava's eyes swell up with tears. And even though she did not make a noise, her cheeks were wet. Ava felt frozen when she heard a single gunshot sound followed by another. Then there was total silence. "Is it over?" Ava mumbled. "Yes. You can let go of me now," Roland replied. Ava removed her hands from around Roland's waist. She stepped to the side to create a distance between them. And in that instant, her sight rested on a gun pointing directly at her. "Roland, they're a fifth," Ava cried out, but before Roland could react, there was a loud gunshot sound. "Ava!" Roland screamed. He hastily gazed to his left, with tears in his worried eyes. "I am fine," Ava mumbled. Roland looked to where the shot noise came from, and he felt relieved. "Boss? Are you okay?" Jax called out. He then stepped over the dead body and approached Ava and Roland. "Thank you for saving me again," Ava softly said with a smile. Jax smiled back at Ava. But when he saw the frown on his boss's face, the smile disappeared from his lips. "What are you doing here?" Roland asked. "You asked me to keep an eye on Lady Belle. That is what I have been doing since last night. She left her home at midnight, and when I followed her, I discovered that she had a spy watching your home. And she hired hitmen to get rid of Ava," Jax replied. "Is this spy internal or external?" "External. He is not stationed within the mansion, but rather watches from the outside of the fence. I guess that is how she knew that you and Ava had left home and were coming to the mall." Ava frowned as her blood boiled with rage. She couldn't stand the news she was hearing. What is wrong with that mad woman? When did I offend her for her to wish death upon me? Ava screamed. Roland and Jax looked shocked for a minute. Then Roland smiles at Ava before focusing on Jax. "How did you figure it out?" Roland asked. "Well, I went to the mansion to report the information that I have gathered to you. But Floral informed me that you and Ava had left to go shopping. I figured that it would be Lux Mall since this is the only place you prefer. And I am glad that I guessed right." Jax explained. "You did well. Wow, a praise." Hey mumbled, Durumbled. "Thank you, boss." As Ava stared around the mall, she could see that it was partly empty, and the sight of the 5 dead bodies crept her skin. Her heart sank when she recalled how pretty and peaceful the place was when she and Roland came inside. But now, it was nothing but a crime scene in her eye. "Clean up this mess." "I am taking Ava home," Roland said. "Okay, boss. I will call the cleaning up crew right now," Jax replied. Ava felt confused about where both men's discussion was heading. "What about the police? Are we not going to wait to give a statement for what happened here?" Ava asked. "In this place, I am the law." "Okay," Roland replied. "Okay, good. Let's go." Ava faintly smiles at Jax before hurrying after Roland. She stuck close to him and remained alert even after they had walked out of the mall. When Ava and Roland reached his car, she felt a shadow behind her. In fear, she turned around and threw a punch. "Ah!" Jax cried. "Oh, I am so sorry, Jax," Ava softly said. She quickly pulled her hand to her side, with an awkward expression on her face. "I guess I deserve a punch in the stomach for creeping up on you guys after what happened in there." Jax teased. "Why are you here?" Roland coldly said. "Oh, the boutique security asked me to hand these bags over to you. I think he is afraid of you." "Thanks." Jax felt speechless, and he remained in shock even after Roland had taken the bag from him and stuffed it into the backseat of the car. "Get in," Roland commanded. Ava obediently got into the car, and Roland shut the back door shut. Then he took a seat behind the steering and slammed the door shut. He said, "Thanks. Maybe Ava is what the boss needs to melt that icy heart of his." But why does this sadden me? Forget it. Jax mumbled as he stared at Roland's Range Rover driving past him. Ava? Roland called out as he kept his eyes on the driveway. Ava mumbled. 3 seconds passed, and when Roland did not speak, Ava turned and gazed at him. What do you feel for Jax? Roland awkwardly asked. What? Ava asked. She felt confused and uncomfortable about Roland's question. And yet she understood exactly what he meant. Do you have feelings for Jax? Roland asked. Why the hell would you ask me such a stupid question? Ava harshly replied. Damn it. Just answer. Fine. I am not in love with Jax, and all I feel for him is gratitude. Great. Let's keep it that way. Don't take my question the wrong way. I just don't want you messing around with one of my loyal men and getting things complicated. Messing around? You are an ass. Roland kept driving without responding, and Ava angrily gazed towards the window. The rest of the ride was quite peaceful, but there was tension in the car the entire drive. The moment Roland drove the car into the garage, Ava stormed out of the vehicle in rage and headed straight into the house. It didn't take long for Roland to follow in after her. Good day, miss and young master. Floral greetings. Hi. Ava mumbled. Hello, Floral. Can you get the stuff in the back of my car for me? Roland said while handing the key over to Floral. Sure thing, sir. At that moment, there was a loud knock on the door that drew everyone's attention to the doorway. I will get it, Floral said. She walked past Roland and Ava and headed towards the door, then opened it. Oh, good day, Lady Belle, Floral said. Chapter 18. This girl actually wants me dead. The moment Belle walked into the hallway, Ava's expression immediately changed, and her mood became full of anger. Roland did not look excited either, and his expression remained aloof as he stared at Belle. Hello, Roland guessed. I apologized for my attitude yesterday. If I knew who you were yesterday, things wouldn't have become bloody, Belle said. Ava clutched her fist to calm down her rage, but she found it difficult to restrain her anger. What a two-face, Ava thought as she stared at the calm smile on Belle's face. In that instant, Floral returned with some of the bags, and Ava saw it as a perfect moment to escape. Well, I need to get going. This coat feels uncomfortable on me, and I want to change into something comfy, Ava said. Belle felt furious, but she masked her anger with a smile and kept her expression calm. You can't leave now. I have something to tell you and Roland. You can do your changing another time, Belle commanded. Well, whatever you have to say can wait. It will take only a few minutes. I am sure that you are generous to spare me a few minutes, right? Ava rudely replied. Belle looked at Roland, and so did Ava. The two ladies had him in an awkward position, but he kept his expression mutual. Ava, you can go to change. I am sure Lady Belle isn't in a rush to speak what is on her mind, Roland stated. Come on, Floral, Ava said. She made certain that Belle saw her victory smile before she ran upstairs with Floral following her. You choose her side, Belle angrily asked. Within a second, Roland had his hand around Belle's throat. He then bangs her against the wall. There are no sides here. I simply hate people walking into my territory and treating it as their own, Roland coldly said. How dare you put your hand on me? Are you trying to start a war? With Rumi on your back, don't you have the guts to have me against you too? Belle slyly stated. Overcome with anger, Roland's fingers grew tighter around Belle's neck, and her struggle to break free from his grip was hopeless. Roland, are you mad? Belle mumbled. She grabbed his wrist and strived to pull his hand from around her neck. After all her effort, she stopped fighting back. At that moment, Roland let go of Belle's neck. Then he drew closer towards her. You don't walk into my home and threaten me or my people. The next time you mess with me, your body will get delivered to your father in pieces. I don't care what that is going to cause me. Roland whispered into her ears. Belle took in a deep breath before allowing herself to exhale. Roland tried to pull away from her, but she grabbed him by the shirt and yanked him against her body. I love your brutality, Belle whispered. Before Roland had the chance to react, Belle's lips were on his, and she had her tongue in his mouth as she passionately kissed him. Get a room, Ava mumbled as she walked down the stairs. Roland pushed Belle of him, but the smile on her face told him that she had already got what she wanted. Ava kept her head held high, and she restrained her tear from falling from her eyes as she walked into past them. Roland followed Ava into the living room, and Belle went after him. A minute later, they were all seated on different couches, and the atmosphere in the room was deadly. That is new, right? Belle asked while staring at Ava. What? Ava angrily replied. Your top and trouser are new, right? You are truly lucky to be living off another, Belle asked. Ava rolled her eyes at Belle's pretentious smile, knowing exactly what her plan was. But she did not plan to let Belle get the better of her. Your eyes are working just fine, so I am sure that the answer to your question is clear for you to see. Also, are we not all in some way liability to someone else? Ava calmly replied. Belle's smile instantly faded, and the way she gazed at Ava made her have goosebumps on her skin. Roland, who is she? Belle shouted. She is not yours to worry about. Now, what is the reason for your visit? Roland replied. Ava felt shocked at how sudden a smile appeared back on Belle's face. What a psychopath attitude, Ava thought. Belle suddenly left her seat and head over, then sat down beside him. That is no way to treat your fiancé. Your daddy won't be happy when I tell him all that has happened here today, Belle playfully said. Are you threatening me? Roland roughly asked. I am not. It is simply a reminder to treat your future wife nicer. You are not my alarm clock, so stop doing its job. Belle cutely giggled at Roland's statement, but no one else was laughing along with her. Ava felt like she was suffocating, and it was like the pain she felt was squeezing the air out of her lung. However, seeing the pleasing smile on Belle's face, Ava dared herself to not cry, and after a few minutes of striving to hold back her tears had passed. She was proud of herself that she didn't. Spit out why you came to my house, or you leave right this instant, Roland said. Fine. There is a ball tomorrow at my home to celebrate my 20th birthday, and I came personally to give you an invitation, Belle said while childishly hugging onto Roland's arm. Selena didn't know how to react since she humiliating that she was jealous and excusing words with someone that was 4 years younger than her. Roland grabbed Belle's hand and removed it from him with a frown on his face. There's no need to spare my feelings. I have already seen the kiss, so what is there to pretend about? Ava thought. Belle felt embarrassed, and the humiliation she was experiencing was becoming difficult for her to turn a blind eye to. And yet she kept her lips curve into a sweet smile. You can bring Ava along with you too, Belle calmly said. Fine, Roland replied. Great. See you before tomorrow. Okay. Belle jumped to her feet, and with a soft smile on her face, she gazed at Roland. Then she stared at Ava, and there was nothing other than hate in her eyes. The idea that someone who tried to kill her twice was inviting her to a party did not feel right to Ava, and just the thought of it sent a chill throughout her body. I will take my leave now. The party starts at 10, so don't be late tomorrow, okay? Belle told Roland. He didn't reply, nor did he give her the face. But Belle did not seem to care. She took a few steps away from the couch, then stopped when she came closer to Ava. "See you tomorrow, darling," Belle said. Ava watched in shock as Belle left the room. Then she turned her focus back to Roland. "This girl actually wants me dead," Ava thought. Chapter 19. The Invite. Even after Ava heard the front door shut, she couldn't help feeling worried, and that stirred up a bunch of mixed emotions inside of her. Roland noticed how disturbed Ava looked, and he became interested in her thoughts. "What is on your mind?" Roland asked. "I am not going to your little fiancé's party. That freak tried to kill me not too long ago," Ava shouted. In a fit of rage, she stood up from the couch and ran out of the room. "Ava, get back here," Roland screamed. He waited for a minute, but when he heard Ava's footsteps rushing up the stairs, Roland stood up from his seat and chased after her. Ava was at her room door when she felt a hand gripped onto her wrist. "Get your hand off me," Ava shouted. At that moment, she finally allowed her tears to wash upon her cheek. Roland did not give ears to Ava's words. Instead, he yanked her along with him, then dragged her into his room and slammed the door shut. "Stop your stubbornness and nonsense. Don't you know that your reckless actions could get you killed?" "Stop acting foolishly," Roland screamed. In that instant, Ava allowed her anger to get the better of her, and without holding back she slapped Roland across his face. Roland folded his fingers, and out of anger, his fist approached Ava's face. But before it could strike her, he redirected his punch against the wall. "Stop pushing me, Ava. I am not a good man," Roland said. Ava felt weak in her leg, and in tears, she slid down to the ground and pulled her knees towards her chest. She could no longer choke back her cry, so she allowed herself to sob loudly. The fact that Roland made an attempt to hit her made Ava shiver, and she started having all these mixed emotions again. Roland walked away and headed to his window, then rested his hands against its frame and allowed the evening air to calm him. "I want to go home," Ava mumbled. "Don't start," Roland said. Ava lifted her head and rested her back against the door as her tears fell onto her hands. "Yesterday Jem called me. And do you know what I told her? I said that I wanted you back. How I wish that I could take back my words. I&G should have gone to a karaoke night last night. Oh, how I wish that I could turn back the hands of time," Ava said. Roland turned around and emotionlessly gazed at Ava. "Why wouldn't you let me leave this hellhole?" Ava screamed in rage. "Because there is no one for you to return to," Roland softly replied. Ava didn't want to think the worst, but her mind had already thought about everything bad that could happen to her family. "Please tell me that they are not dead. I am begging you," Ava cried. "What?" "No, they are not. I got to everyone close to you before Rumi could and scattered them across the globe in several of my safe houses," Roland replied. Ava thought her heart was going to explode from the rage pumping through her veins. "So it is not only me that you are holding captive, but my loved ones too?" Ava sadly asked. "Captive, Rumi will slaughter them just to get to you and me." "I did this for you," Roland shouted. "I didn't ask for this. I know. You put me in this mess. I am sorry." Ava gazed directly into his eyes. Then her sight fell on his bleeding knuckles. "You are injured," she mumbled. "Just another bruise to add to the number," Roland said. "Won't you get them checked by a doctor?" "Maybe. But to be honest, I am used to the pain." The room became quiet for some time, and without speaking Roland sat on the floor. He then stared at Ava as she gazed at him, and they sat there for a while. "So, What now? Do I have to wear a gown and play pretend at your little fiancé's party? Ava asked. She thought that she was done crying. But once the question rolled off her tongue, her eyes felt wet again. Roland stood to his feet, walked to Ava, then sat down right next to her. She stared at him, and when he smiled at her, Ava rested her head on his shoulder. I guess you do. Also, stop calling Belle little. She's a wide card and a ticking time bomb ready to explode. Her tactics are deadly, and she will murder a man with a smile on her face, Roland replied. Ava pressed her lips together to stop herself from crying any further. You seem to know Belle well. Was she the reason you left me? Do you love her? She mumbled. Roland knew where the conversation was leading, and thought his heart wished to continue with such discussions. It does matter. What you need to focus on is how to conduct yourself at the party tomorrow, Roland said. Ava shut her eyes for a second, and her tears rolled out of her puffy eyes. What do I need to know? Ava asked as she removed her head from Roland's shoulder. Well, you shouldn't speak to anyone that I don't introduce you to. Do not eat or drink anything given to you, and stay close by me there, the entire time we are there, Roland explained. Ava stood to her feet, and then she looked down at Roland with a bright smile on her face. Okay, Ava cheerfully said. Roland woke up from the floor with a concerned expression on his face. Are you okay? He asked. I am not yours to worry about anymore. I promise to behave accordingly tomorrow, Ava replied. Even though she was smiling, Roland could see the pain hiding behind her smile. I am tired. I need to sleep, Ava replied. Okay, Roland mumbled. He stepped aside and allowed Ava to open the door. She then briefly stared back at him before closing the door behind her. It is better this way. You being in love with me will only cause you more pain. It hurts not to be the reason you are crying. I promise to make it up to you by protecting you, Roland mumbled to himself. Ava entered her room and locked the door behind her. Then she headed to her bed and dropped flat on the soft mattress. What's waiting for me tomorrow? Ava thought. That question remained on her mind until she cried herself to sleep. Chapter 20. I will take the bullet for you. Ava's eyes opened the next morning. But she wished that she had not woken up because everything from yesterday came rushing back to her memories, like a bad dream that she was reliving. She dragged herself out of bed and sluggishly walked into her bathroom. Good morning to another day of trying to escape death, Ava mumbled to herself. She took out her toothbrush and put toothpaste on it. The moment Ava put the brush into her mouth, she heard a knock on the door. Here we go again, Ava thought. Floral waited for another 5 minutes. Then these minutes increased to 15, and another 5 added on them before Ava could open the door. My young master request, Floral tried to say, but she was unable to finish when Ava cut her off. Breakfast, right? Ava mumbled. Yes. Great. Ava downheartedly walked past Floral and headed downstairs. What is her deal this morning? Floral mumbled before following Ava. Roland was already seated at the table, with Jax seated next to him, when Ava walked into the dining room. Good morning, Jax and Roland, Ava mumbled. She then lazily picked up the fork and twisted it into her plate of pasta. What is wrong with her? Jax asked. Roland eyed Ava playing with her food. Then he put his focus back on his. I don't know, Roland replied. After taking a few bits of his breakfast, he gazed at Jax. So what do you have to report this morning? Roland asked. I am sorry to be a disappointment, boss, but Lady Belle has been awfully quiet recently. I failed to find out any of her plans for tonight, Jax replied. That is not good. Silence is one of the most deadly weapons that we can't afford to take lightly. Yes, boss. I will have your most trusted men implanted at the party. No night to minimize the risk of something dangerous happening to you or Ava. Roland looked away from his food and gazed at Ava for a moment. And so did Jax. Are you sure about taking her into Lion's Den? Jax asked. The only place that she is going to be safe is by my side, Roland answered. Ava suddenly dropped the fork on the table and stood up from her seat. Is there a problem with the food? Roland asked. I don't have an appetite. Can I be excused? Ava asked with her head bent. Sure. Thanks. Without another word, Ava left the table and headed back upstairs. She didn't once look at me. Seeing how depressed she is now, I am second-guessing if I should take her to the party, Roland thought. Jax was about to put a bite of his pasta when he remembered something that he forgot to say. Boss, roomy men are making business difficult for us, and we have lost 2 men in a crossfire with his people, Jax explained. Reduced our transport of goods for a while and tell the guys to lay look for now. Roland replied. Won't the big boss get mad when he finds out that the delivery of goods has become limited? You guys' lives are more important than weapons. I can handle my dad. Just follow instructions. Sure thing, boss. Ava kept changing positions on the mattress as her mind kept skipping through disturbing events that she thought would take place at the party. Then a knock on her door suddenly brought her back to reality. How is it? Ava shouted. It is me, Floral. Sir, asked me to deliver some fruits and sweets to your room. Floral's voice echoed from the other side of the door. Ava got out of bed and went to open the door. Once she did, she took the tray out of Floral's hands. Thanks, Ava said with a slim smile on her face. Floral nodded before walking away, and Ava headed back into the room, then shut her door closed. At least he is being considerate. Maybe with him by myself tonight, I won't have to fear death, Ava said. The seconds became minutes, and those minutes quickly changed into hours. And finally, it was time for Ava to get dressed for the party. She crawled out of bed and went to her closet. She then opened it and blankly stared at the clothes. If I am going to die today, it would be fancy to die in a $3 million dress. Ava mumbled as she got a hold of the gown. She slowly unbuttoned her blouse and dropped it to the floor. Then she took off her trousers. At that moment, the room door opened and Ava anxiously turned around to see who it was. Don't you know how to knock? Ava asked with anger in her tone. Your door was unlocked, Roland replied after he had closed the door. Get out. I have seen it all, so let's not pretend to be strangers to each other's bodies. Ava ignored his remark and focused on getting her dress on. Once she got done wearing it, she turned around and saw Roland passionately staring at her. What? Ava shyly asked. You looked stunning, Roland said. Ava giggled beneath her breath before getting a hold of her sandals. She then headed over to the stool and took a seat. Really? Wow, it feels good to know that I am going to die looking stunning, Ava said as she wore her sandals. Why would you say such a thing? Roland asked. Isn't it true though? I mean, Belle was the one who sent 5 hitmen to kill me yesterday. And now today, I am going to attend her party. I just felt like I am walking into a death trap that can't escape. You know that I will do everything to keep you safe tonight, right? Ava did not answer. Instead, she focused on wearing her other heel. She wanted so desperately to believe in Roland's assurance. But yesterday's event kept reminding her that he was only a man, and all humans have a limit. Roland walked away from the doorway. When he came closer to Ava, he squatted and looked her directly in the eyes. I am not going to let anything bad happen to you tonight, Roland honestly said, "There is always going to be a fifth hitman lacking in the dark." "What if you don't have the chance to react like yesterday?" Ava asked. Roland could hear the fear in her voice as she spoke, and that broke his heart. Therefore, he gently placed his hand under her chin and then lightly pushed her head up so that Ava's eyes could meet with his. "Then, I will take the bullet for you," Roland replied. Chapter 21. The Castle of Devils. After Roland's response settled into Ava's mind, she felt like she could finally breathe. And it was not because he told her that he could die for her, but it was about the fact that he truly had her back. Ava honestly smiled at Roland. And in that instant, he hugged her tightly for about 2 minutes before letting go of Ava. "So, do you feel ready now?" Roland asked. "Give me a second to get my hair done, then I can answer your question." Ava replied, "Okay, meet me downstairs when you are ready." "Sure." Roland stood up to his feet and then walked out of the room. Once the door shut, the smile on Ava's face slowly faded. She got up from the stool and approached the dresser. When Ava gazed at her reflection in the mirror, she started to feel her insecurities and fear creeping back into her heart. "Snap out of it. Roland said that he's going to protect you, so trust that he will," Ava mumbled. A while later, as Roland waited patiently in the living room for Ava to come downstairs, he heard footsteps approaching. So he gazed towards the entrance, and in that instant his jaw dropped. "Be honest. How do I look?" Ava nervously asked. "Perfect," Roland said. The look in his eyes when he spoke remained Ava of the old days, when he would wake up early in the morning and gazed at her with undeniable love. He aroused from the couch and walked up to Ava without taking his eyes off her. "Shall we?" Roland asked as he extended his arm. "I am ready," Ava replied. She then gently headed onto Roland's arm, and he escorted her out of the mansion. Jax got out of the car when he saw Roland approaching the limousine. But when his sight rested on Ava, time seemed to pause and it felt like he and Ava were the only ones in the entire world. "Jax," Roland called out. However, he got no response from his man. But Roland wasn't confused a bit. Instead, he felt enraging when he noticed how Jax was gazing at Ava. "Hey! Wake up from your lust," Roland shouted. Jax immediately shook his head to pull his focus back on track and straight out his behavior. "I am sorry, boss. I failed to keep my act together. I deserve to be punished," Jax hastily replied. Ava gently squeezed Roland's arm out of fear. He then looked at her, and then she stared back at him with concern in her eyes. "What does he mean by punish?" Ava asked. "That is not for you to worry about," Roland replied. He had anger in his eyes when he stared back at Jax, but he never allowed it to be expressed on his face. "Get the door," Roland commanded. Without wasting a second, Jax rushed to the car back door and opened it. Ava was the first to enter into the vehicle, and Roland followed in after her. "My life was spared. Thank you, Ava," Jax thought as he shut the back door. It didn't take long for Jax to get behind the steering, and without hesitation, he started the vehicle's engine and drove out of the yard. It was 10 on the dot when Roland's luminous speed passed an open electrical gate and entered into an enormous fence. The moment Jax applied the car's brake, Roland stepped out of the car and Ava followed him. She stood next to him while admiring the stunning garden before them. Ava wanted to worry about what lies inside the castle, like building in front of her, but the beauty of the various roses distracted her mind from conflicting thoughts. "Ava," Roland said. She immediately took her sight off the flower and focused her eyes on him. "What is it?" Ava asked. "Well, you were right when you said that this party is a death trap. The people in there are all merciless killers," Roland said. "Where is this conversation heading?" Because right now, I feel like getting back into the car and having Jax drive me home. That is too risky. I don't trust anyone at my house right now. Isn't it difficult to live in such a manner? Well, it is. But that is not the issue. Then, what is? Roland's expression became serious, and Ava knew that she was going to hate the next words that came out of his mouth. When we walked in there, Belle became my date, and you have to refer to me as your young master or Sir Roland. You will not speak unless you are being spoken to, and always keep your response short and uncomplicated. Roland hastily explained, You are just going to dash me. I thought you said that you had my back. The only reason I came to this party was that you made me believe that I was going to be with you the entire time. But now you are telling me that I have to stand by and watch you entertain others? Ava angrily replied. She held back her tears since she wasn't willing to destroy her makeup that she had worked so hard to wear. Look, it is not the time for you to play stubborn, Roland said, while striving to keep his voice calm. I am not going in there with you, if I am just going play dumb. Ava stated without any care. Roland put both his hands into his trouser pocket to stop himself from hitting something because of the anger rising inside of him. Ava, if you don't walk in there with me, Belle will use that against you and me. The fact that my father and her father are both here, things will become extremely complicated for me to handle. Roland explained. Fine. But since you have a date, I want Jax to accompany me inside, Ava replied. At that moment, she saw pure hurt and rage on Roland's face. And even though that was what Ava wanted, it brought her no joy to see him hurt. Whatever. Jax can escort you into the building, Roland replied. Out of anger, he stormed off, leaving Ava alone with Jax. I took you said that you would take a bullet for me. Then how could you leave me here? Ava mumbled. Miss, are you ready to go in? Jax asked. Ava turned her head and gazed at him. She then plastered a smile on her face to overshadow her sadness. Yes. And I am sorry for using you, Ava said. It is okay, let's go, Jax calmly replied. Roland anxiously kept looking at the door as he chatted with a few of the guests. And the moment Ava walked in with Jax by herself, he gave the guest his full attention. Welcome to the Castle of Devils. Jax mumbled to Ava. Chapter 22. I'm dead. Ava felt troubled when she heard the words, Castle of Devils. She knew that the people within the hall could be considered as wolves in fancy dresses and luxury suits. But when Jax referred to them as devils, Ava's fear level increased. She kept her head bent, and her eyes focused on the crystal snowflakes tiles so that she wouldn't draw any attention towards herself. Why did you call this place the Castle of Devils? Ava whispered. Jax anxiously looked around the hall to make sure that it was safe for him to speak before he could utter a word to Ava. Well, Lady Belle is the only child for Boss Bardo, and since his love for her is endless, he allowed his daughter to have whatever she wants and whoever she desires. And with such unlimited power in the hands of a girl like Belle, she has become a true devil with an innocent face. Jax mumbled. Ava giggled a bit at Jax's statement, since she found it a bit too extreme. Sure, she is a brat, but I wouldn't consider her to be a devil. That word is a bit strong for her, Ava said with a smile. Lady Belle always has a new personal maid every week. Do you know why it is like that? Jax asked. Ava shook her head as she looked at Jax, and the expression on his face told her that she was not going to like what he was about to say. It is because the old ones usually get killed by her for the simplest mistakes that they made, and their blood is not the only stain on her hands. Jax mumbled. What? Ava muttered. I have seen her slice a man's neck open because he unintentionally stepped on her shoes. People who offended Lady Belle don't live to tell the story, because she is a brutal being with a dark soul. Oh my! Ava squeezed her dress for a second, to help calm herself down and ease the fear she felt. Lady Belle is no princess, and nor is she a brat. Instead, she is a cold-blooded murderer, and the only reason that you are not dead yet is because of my boss, Jax explained. Does no one hold her accountable for her evil deeds? Ava whispered. There is no law governing this island. Instead, the powerful rules and other obediently followed. So Roland was kidding when he said that he was the law. He wasn't. There is a chart that outlines the people's dominance on this island and the power they hold. At the top of the chart, my boss is listed number 1. Even his father is beneath him, and with such power comes great enemies. That is why he is so skeptical about everything and everyone. When the musician began playing another song, Roland gazed at Ava for a second, and he wasn't pleased when he saw her deep in conversation with Jax, and how she seemed invested in whatever he was saying. As Roland stared at them chatting, he clutched on to his glass in rage. Are you okay, Sir Roland? One of the guests asked. I'm fine, Roland replied. He faintly smiled at the lady, then sipped his wine. However, his rage left like a volcano of hot lava about to erupt. But Roland allowed his anger to get shielded behind his serious expression as he kept interacting with more guests. Who is the second on this chart? Ava whispered, but somehow she felt like she already knew the answer. It is Lady Belle, Jax replied. But how? She is so young. When she was 14, she asked her father to turn over his entire underground business to her, and now she had grown it into an empire, making her the second richest person on the island. I think I have an idea about who the first wealthiest person is. It is Roland, right? You guessed correctly. Ava eyed Roland, and she found it hard to look away as she watched him chat with others. He is not the man that I know. Everything our relationship was built on was a lie. I fell for the side of him that wasn't real. How pathetic, Ava mumbled out loud before realizing that she meant to say it in her head. She slowly looked at Jax, and she could tell by his expression that he had heard it all. I am not shocked. I figured out a long time ago that you and my boss were not strangers to each other. Jax whispered, can you not let him know about the fact that you know? With the outrageous temper he has, who knows what he is going to do to me if he finds out that I let the fact that we know each slip? Ava anxiously pleaded. At first, Jax laughed at how tense Ava was over a little issue. But when he saw that she was truly afraid, he stopped giggling. Hey, don't worry, your secret is safe with me. If you still don't feel reassured, I will tell you a little secret that my boss doesn't want you to know. Then we will be even. Jax softly said. What is it? Ava asked. I guess you don't trust me. Well, the bruises on my boss's body were because he was protecting you from our big boss. So give him a little credit, okay? He is really doing his best to keep you safe. Okay. At that moment, Ava's heart felt lighter and her stress seemed to subside. She lifted her head and gazed directly at Roland, and coincidentally, he looked her way. The instant their eyes met, Ava's heartbeat became loud in her ears, and her face felt hot. She wanted to look away from Roland's dazzling eyes, but she felt glued to the position she was facing. I didn't notice before. He looked stunning in his suit, Ava thought. Jax confusingly stared at Ava. He then looked in the direction her eyes were focused in, and when he saw Roland stared at him, Jax immediately bowed his head. Can I please have everyone facing the stairs? Lady Belle will be making her entrance in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The host announced. The light became brighter as the guests' attention got drawn to the staircase. And the moment Belle took her first step, the hall became noise with wow, devilish bitch, Roland angrily mumbled when he gazed at Belle. "This is not good." Jax whispered. "What?" Ava asked. She took her sight of Roland and stared at Jax. She then followed his gaze and her eyes rested on Belle. "I'm dead," Ava mumbled. Chapter 23. Trouble in the Castle of Devils. Roland stared at Ava, and he could see pure fear in her eyes. The moment the waiter walked past Roland, he set his glass onto the tray, before rushing over to Ava. "We got to go," Roland hastily said. "What?" Ava asked out of shock. Roland could tell that Ava wasn't in her right state of mind, so he held her hands and led her to the door. However, a few steps away from the entrance, Roland stopped walking, and so did Jax and Ava. "Sir, things just got a bit complicated," Jax mumbled. "I can see that," Roland replied. "What is happening?" Ava asked. Then, a gray-headed and built elderly man walked up to them with a murderous gaze in his eyes. "Good evening, Big Boss," Jax said. He then bowed for a second before lifting his head. But he was careful not to make eye contact with Luther. "Young lady, how close are you with my son, and what is your relationship?" Luther coldly asked. "Son?" Ava mumbled. She gazed at Roland in confusion. Then she noticed that Jax was signaling her with his eye, and after a second of intensely staring at him, Ava understood what he was trying to tell. "Dad?" Roland tried to explain, but his father cut him off. "Shut up, Roland. Let the lady speak for herself. She doesn't seem deaf nor dumb," Luther screamed. At this point, most of the guests' attention was slowly shifting away from Lady Belle and being focused on what was happening at the entrance. "Sir Roland and I are nothing but strangers," Ava respectfully said. Then, "How dare a nobody like you hold hands with my son? What do you think you are? Can't you be less of a slut in the presence of others?" Luther yelled. Ava moved her fingers to signal Roland to let go of her hand. But he kept squeezing onto as he coldly stared at his father. "At first, when she walked into the hall, I thought she was a decent person because of how sophisticated she dressed. But who knew that she was nothing but a thirsty low class?" A lady intoned. "A slut is still a slut, even if she is clothed in a diamond garment," one of the guests said out loud. The hall became full of judgmental statements against Ava, and as she listened to the scandal people had to say about her, it became unbearable for her to handle. Their mocking statements and ridiculous remarks wounded her feelings to the extent that Ava felt nothing but rage. And at that moment, she yanked her hand out of Roland's grip. "I don't care what power you have or who you are, but you know nothing about me, and how dare you judge me without even fully understanding the entire situation?" Ava screamed. The entire room became voiceless and still. People could not believe the boldness of Ava and what she had just said. Roland was about to intervene in the situation, when Luther vigorously slapped Ava across her face, leaving a cut on her lip. "Who gave you the right to speak to me in such a tone?" Luther shouted. The hall got busy with noise and things were getting out of control. The whispering got more emphatic, and people kept mumbling or turning to the next person standing by them to gossip. "Does hitting a girl who can be your daughter make you feel somewhat powerful? Because all I see standing in front of me is a bully," Ava harshly said as she held back her tears. Out of rage, Luther raised his hands to hit Ava again. But Roland seized his father's hand in his grip. "Let's not make a scene here, father," Roland stated. Luther felt embarrassed as he looked at the faces of the guest. He then coldly gazed at his son before walking past him. "Uncle Luther, what is the matter? I could hear your voice from a far distance," Belle sweetly said. "Don't worry your pretty head, dear. It is nothing that Uncle Luther can't handle." "Oh, my darling, you looked stunning," Luther said with a smile. However, his expression changed when he took a closer look at Belle's dress. He then gazed back at Ava. "You! How dare you!" Belle shouted. Ava took a single step back when she saw Belle angrily walking towards her. The moment Belle came closer to Ava, she released a slap against Ava's ear. "How dare you wear the same dress that I choose to wear?" Belle screamed. "You!" Roland roared. The hall became still, and silence took over the atmosphere. "How could you stand by her side when I am supposed to be your fiancé?" Belle cried. She started sobbing loudly. And Ava grew speechless as she watched Luther and other guests comfort Belle, while she put on the perfect show. Ava felt shocked. And not shocked at the same time. There were so many mixed emotions running through her that it was hard for her to decide on what she was feeling on the inside. "Who made my princess cry on her big day?" Arto shouted. Ava caught Belle, staring at her. And at that moment she moved her lips in silence, while devilishly looking into Ava's eyes. "You are dead," Ava thought as she read Belle's lips' movement. She then gazed at Roland, but his expression remained emotionless, and that had her feelings extremely worried. "Daddy, I don't feel like celebrating anymore. Today was supposed to be my happy day, but she came to my party wearing the same gown as me and holding hand with my date," Belle cried. Bardo gazed at Ava, and his eyes told her that he wasn't going to allow her to leave this party alive. And that made Ava numb. She was about to take a step back, when Roland grabbed her hand again. "Who allowed you to let go of my hand?" Roland shouted. The hall got silent as everyone stared at Ava and Roland with disbelief in their eyes. Chapter 24. Words and a Blade. Ava stared at Roland with shock in her expression, as he gently squeezed her hand. Then she faintly smiled, knowing that was all the assurance she needed. "Roland, this girl disrespected my daughter on her special day. How dare you stand up for her?" Barto shouted in rage. "I apologize that my guest offended Lady Belle. It is my fault for not teaching her properly. I will handle her when we get home so a situation like this cannot happen again," Roland calmly said with coldness in his eyes. The expression on everyone's face made it obvious that they were dumbfounded. But none of the guests dared to voice out their thoughts. "Boss, this is a trap. If you try to do anything to the girl now, it will prove that you haven't accepted Sir Roland's apology, and you are holding a grudge against him which will leave you in a difficult position with his supporters, and he has a lot of them." "But if I don't, I may lose face and respect," Bardo mumbled back. "Nothing good comes out of anyone who crosses Sir Roland, so I advise you to play your cards right, boss." "I know." For a moment, Bardo eyed his daughter, but Bella's face remained emotionless as she calmly stared back at him, and that sent chills down his spine, knowing that his daughter's silence always means bloodshed. The hall remained awfully peaceful, and yet everyone was aware of the uprising storm that had most of the guests' hearts pounding in fear. As he made absolutely sure that he didn't draw any attention to himself, Jack slowly walked up to Roland and whispered, "What do you think they are talking about, boss?" From the lines on Bardo's forehead and how tightly he has his fists clenched. "He has been advised not to make a move against me, and he knows that he has to obey," Roland mumbled. "Wow, you are so smooth, boss. What do we do now? We need to get out of here. Belle is as unstable as an erupting volcano, and I don't want things getting complicated. It will put Ava's life in more danger than it already is right now." His little conversation with his advisor wasn't to Bardo liking, but he knew his option was limited to only one choice. So he swallowed his pride and stiffly smiled at Roland. "Since you have apologized, This old man can only forgive you and hold you to your words that you will teach your tramp to know her place. Barto provokingly stated. A fresh swell of anger rose through him. But Roland restrained it and kept his expression emotionless, even though his temper had sparked. I am glad to hear. Since there is nothing more, we will take our leave, Roland stiffly said, while fighting the chaos of his rage. Barto slightly nodded his head, and yet his entire body was trembling as he struggled against his anger. Let's go, Roland whispered to Ava, but she felt like her feet were frozen to the floor as resentment blossomed within her. The number of filthy names people had called her kept replaying in her head, which had rage throbbed in her like a heartbeat. And even though she wanted to leave the party alive, she still wanted to keep her dignity. Ava? Let's go, Roland mumbled. Did you hear the word he called me? Ava whispered with her eyes glowing with hate. It is not time to act stubborn. He referred to me as a tramp. Roland could feel everyone's eyes on them. And although he wanted to get out of there fast, he knew the kind of woman Ava was. Is there a problem? Barto asked. With his eyes focused on Ava's willful expression, Roland tightened his lips for a second before staring at Barto. Then he slyly smiled. I need you to apologize to my guest, since I don't like the fact that you called her a tramp. Roland calmly said, and yet there was dominance in his tone. Mumbling aroused in the hall, as guests expressed their shock to the next person beside them. But their voices never became more than a whisper. What nonsense are you spitting out of your mouth, boy? Luther shouted in disbelief. Roland scowled at his father for a second. Then he placed his gaze back on Barto. I was man enough to apologize for my wrong. Why are you silent? Are you not a man? Roland mockingly said. You are overstepping your boundaries. Barto angrily stated. The mocking smirk that appeared on Roland's lips made Barto feel less confident about his power and more afraid of the man he was facing. But he masked his emotions behind his angry eyes. Are you not the one barking louder than you should? You insult my guest, which is the same as disrespecting me. Don't you think it is only fair that you should even the score with an apology? Roland loudly said. Barto stared at his advisor, and he already knew what their words of advice were. So he clenched his fists and slightly bowed his head to hide the embarrassment he felt. Since you have given me a different perspective of my statement, I now see how ignorant my words were and how I may have offended you. Barto intoned with his fist clenched. Haha, what the hell was that? An apology. You must be kidding me, however. I really don't find it funny. Not a single bit, Roland aggressively roared. Without realizing it, the rage he had been suppressing was consuming him from the inside. And all Roland could feel now was the anger he first felt when Barto called Ava a tramp. Boy, don't you think that you are pushing this too far? Luther firmly said, while coldly staring at his son. All I asked for is an apology, father. You are man enough to admit defeat to me. So why can't Barto be more than a coward to apologize? Roland harshly intoned while staring at his father's furious expression. Then his resentful gaze swayed away from Luther and rested on Ava after she had lightly squeezed his hand. At that moment, Roland could see the fear in her eyes. But he knew that he couldn't back out now since the storm had already begun. So he gazed away from her and harshly stared at Barto. He looked so mad. I don't think I have seen him this angry before. What have I done? Ava worriedly thought as she bent her head to avoid the hateful look most of the guests were giving her. Shit! Things have gotten complicated, Jax whispered. He then positioned himself in a defensive pose with his hand bent, behind his back, and just an inch away from his gun since he knew that there is a possibility of the situation going south. Boss, you know what you have to do before this turns into a gang war. Although there will be losses on both sides if that happens. but yours will be far worse compared to Sir Roland. Barto's advisor whispered to him. He then stared at the faces of everyone. Before clearing his throat, I suppose calling a guest of yours a tramp is inappropriate. For that I am sorry. Barto slowly uttered with the words barely escaping his lips. However, everyone's ears were too attentive to misheard what he had said. And the whispers that followed only got louder by the second. He apologized, Ava thought, unable to content her happiness. Ava softly smiled as she left her head. Then her eyes met with Roland's gaze, and he faintly smiled at her before coldly staring back at Barto and the others. Good. Since we are done here, it is time to hit the road, Roland said. He then ignored his father's frown and pulled Ava along with him as he began to walk towards the front door. You old fool, you are only good at licking others' boots. However, it is a blessing that you have a daughter like me to cover your shame. A low-class filth is not leaving here with my man, except he is carrying her dead body out, Bella said with her fingers lightly resting on the blade in her dress pocket. With a bloodthirsty and murderous look in her eyes, she placed her right hand in her pocket and held tightly onto her blade handle. Chapter 25. Pray. After allowing Roland and Ava to walk a few distances ahead, Bella pulled her hand out of her dress pocket and threw the knife at Ava. However, Roland hastily caught it before the blade could penetrate Ava's neck and hit her spinal cord. Then his eyebrows lowered and his lips tightened as he stared at the murderous look in Belle's eye. And it woke his anger. The entire hall was in chaos, while everyone watched in horror as blood dripped from Roland's palm and fell to the ground. Within less than a second, the room suddenly became noisy with desperate screams and cries of the guests. When Roland's men stormed the hall with weapons and placed everyone under gunpoint, except for Ava and him, the atmosphere quickly became hostile, and no one dared to move or utter a word as they all waited for Roland's next move. Then, a smirk settled on Belle's lips while she stared at Jax's gun, pointing directly at her. Then her gaze swayed towards Roland's mad eyes, and her mocking smile grew wider. Boy, what the hell do you think you are doing? Tell your man to stand down now, Luther screamed, finally getting over his shock. Ignoring his father's remark, Roland walked over to Belle with his cold gaze fixed directly on hers. Then he grabbed her wrist, and everyone in the room held their breath, while their eyes brimmed with fear. You should be careful where you throw your toys. Except you want a bloodbath on this island. Let today not repeat itself, clear? Roland coldly said with so much dominance in his tone that Belle remained speechless as he laid the knife into her palm and closed her fingers tightly around it. Whispered, and cries began to echo around the room as the guests stared at Roland and Belle with horror in their eyes. Roland, I am sorry for my daughter's reckless action. It is her father's fault for not teaching her well. I promise that such an act will not be repeated, Barlow said, while angrily staring at how tightly Roland was squeezing Bella's fingers around the blade and the blood that was rolling down the back of her hand. While are you taking the blame? It was not your hand that threw the knife, or are you trying to confess that you were behind what happened just now? Is this party a setup to assassinate me? Roland firmly asked as his grip on Belle's fingers tightened. No, it is not that. Shut up, if you are too dumb to speak. Rage roared through Barlow's mind, when the whisper of mocking laughter and mumbling echoed around him. Then he opened his mouth to reply. But his words kept getting stuck in his head as he struggled to get them out. Then he angrily stared at Roland's numb face and thought, why is it so easy for him to get away with such a trick, and I can't do the same? When Roland finally let go of Bella's hand, the tiles beneath them were painted with their blood. However, When she and Ava gazed at each other, Belle didn't flicker or show any sign of pain even though her fist was covered in blood. "This girl is sick," Ava mumbled, feeling even more afraid of Belle, and still she kept a calm expression, even though her eyes were locked with Belle's bloodthirsty gaze, and her body had gone cold with dread. With an aloof expression on his face, Roland walked over to Ava, took her hand into his bloody palm, and angrily mumbled, "Are you happy now? I didn't vomit any of." Ava nervously stuttered, but Roland pulled her along with him, not giving her the chance to process her words and utter them. "Guns down, fellows. This is not a battlefield. It is a party, so let's treat it as such. Thank you, Lady Bella, for the invitation. But I think I have overstayed my welcome, so my people and I will be taking our exit," Roland slyly shouted without stopping as he continued pulling Ava along with him. After she, Roland, and Jax were safely outside, his men finally followed him out, relieving the guests from gunpoint. However, terror still roamed the hall, and within less than a minute, guests began leaving in a rush until Luther and his men, Belle, her father, and their people were the only ones left. When Barlow saw that his daughter was still tightly holding onto the blade, he slowly swallowed down his spit and approached her. "Dear, let Daddy have the knife, okay?" Barlow softly said while choosing his words wisely. After a moment of hesitation, Belle slowly opened her hand, and her father gently took out the blood-stained blade from her palm. Then, a sight fell upon the deep cut in the skin of her palm, and her resentment for Ava grew inside her, like a tumor. "You can try to protect her with all your might, but there is no place on this island that will keep her hidden from me." Belle mumbled beneath her breath before faintly chuckling. "Did you say something, dear?" Barlow asked in confusion. "I am going to kill her. Don't behave irrationally. From what I have seen here tonight, whoever that girl is, she is important to Roland and may be more valuable to him than his life." While listening to her father's words, Belle could feel her temperature rising and her blood boiling with anger. "I know that, and every time I am reminded of it, I have this edge to slice my blade into someone's neck and watch them bleed out. And the only face that comes to mind is that bitch," Belle shouted, and the hall grew silent. "Watch what you say. Even the walls have ears in this place," Barlow said with fright in his voice. As Belle stared at her father, her eyes became soulless. Then she smirked and said, "Do I look like I care? When my mind settles on my prey, I will hunt it down and make sure that its body is cold and lifeless. Ava just happens to be my next prey." Chapter 26. An excellent target. As Jax drove them home, Roland and Ava sat in the back seat of the car without uttering a word to each other, unable to bear the silence any longer. Ava stared away from the windshield and pouted as she gazed at Roland. Then she frustratingly sighed and asked, "Are you not going to scold me? Why should I?" Roland mumbled, keeping his eyes center on the V-mirror to make sure that no suspicious car was following them. It got quiet again when a look of stubbornness crossed Ava's face. Then she turned her focus back to the window. "Are you mad at me?" Ava abruptly asked after a few minutes had passed. "Should I be?" Roland mumbled with calmness in his tone. "I don't know." "You tell me." "Tell you what?" The anger raging through Ava's heart was slowly spreading inside her. And when silence fell between her and Roland, she couldn't hold in her rage anymore. "Why are you being so quiet?" Ava shouted, feeling more frustrated when she stared at him and his face bore a calm expression. "Is that a bad thing?" Roland asked without losing his carefree appearance. While staring deep into his eyes, it finally became clear to Ava that she was getting the silent treatment from Roland. And since he was the only want she knew on the island, she didn't want him keeping speech from her, so surrendering was her only option. I am sorry that I didn't listen to you and caused a scene when everything could have been avoided if I had swallowed my pride and walked away as you asked me to. Ava hastily said without realizing that her eyes had gotten watery with tears. It is too late now for such a realization. You just made yourself an excellent target to all my enemies and started a storm that is going to end up in a bloodbath. Roland casually said. As the soft echo of sobbing noise flowed into his ear, he turned his head. Then his gaze met with Ava's worried expression, and when he saw tears rolling out of her eyes, Roland's hand caressed upon her cheek and wiped it. Afterward he frowned and said, "This place is not for the weak. If you show any sign of weakness, the darkness on this island will swallow you whole and spit out your bones. So try not to shed tears in front of me or anyone else. Is that clear?" Fear slowly began to creep from the pit of Ava's stomach and travel further into her body. Yet she felt numb and unable to cry while staring at the sudden coldness in Roland's eyes. "I want to go home. It is better for me to take my chances with Rami than you," Ava subconsciously mumbled, even though those words were meant to get said in her head. The patient on Roland's face slowly faded. Then a frown settled on his lips as he stared at Ava, and angrily said, "You haven't learned your lesson yet. Maybe I have been pampering you too much. Well, it is time to put a stop to that." When Roland looked Ava dead in her eyes, she knew then that he wasn't kidding, and she slowly swallowed down her fear, but it left her feeling a tightness in her throat. "Jax, stop the car," Roland coldly said as he stared the other way to avoid seeing the panic in Ava's eyes. "Huh, boss?" Jax asked, pretending as though he didn't hear the first command while hoping it would help change Roland's mind. "Should I get rid of you and hire someone else since you have become deaf and dumb?" "No, boss. I am stopping the car right this instant." The moment Ava felt the car come to a stop, her body began to shiver uncontrollably. Then she looked out the windshield and suddenly realized how dark the night had become, and her blood immediately went cold as she felt her heart hammer against her chest. "Get out. It is useless to try and protect someone whose stubbornness is bound to get them killed. So get your ass out of my car," Roland firmly said with no sense of remorse in his tone. "I am sorry," Ava mumbled beneath her breath while her head humbly hung low. "I said, get out. I am sorry. What else do you want from me? All this is your fault. I was stubborn from birth, which was fine until you entered my life and weaponized it. And every single day, I regret walking back into your life again." The honesty in Roland's words sent a stabbing pain ripping through Ava's heart, but she snorted with laughter and said, "The feeling is neutral. I may hate your guts, but the reality still stands that you are the only person that I know in this death trap you call home. So from now on, I will try to listen to you." "Great. Your training starts tomorrow," Roland softly said while his hands clenched into fists. Confusion settled on Ava's face as she stared at Roland. Then her eyebrows drew together while she asked, "What training? You didn't think that I was going to babysit you forever. As you said, you hate my guts, so it is time to prepare you to leave my home." Even though she didn't show it in her expression, Ava's heart sank when she thought about leaving Roland's side. Yet she kept her thoughts to herself while focusing on the windshield. "Uncle Luther, are you about to leave?" Belle asked, with a bright smile on her lips as she approached Luther. He then stopped a few distances away from the front door and turned around to face Belle. While staring at the excitement in her eyes, he grinned and asked, "Does having a new target make you happy?" Yes," Belle childishly mumbled. "Haha, that's why you are my favorite. But be careful on how you go about it. Roland is like a poison snake. Step on his tail and you will end up dead." "Don't worry, Uncle. Belle is a great hunter. That is my girl. Once you and Roland get married, I can finally retire in peace. After his brief chat with Belle ended, Luther left the building and got into the backseat of his Mercedes. Then the driver drove off with 5 other vehicles following closely behind him. 5 minutes had gone by when Luther's phone rang in his coat pocket, so he took it out and answered the call. "Who is this?" Luther roughly asked with less patience in his tone. "You have something on your island that belongs to me, and I want it back." A cold male voice flowed from the phone speaker. "Who the hell are you?" Rami, Chapter 29. Vanish. Everything was blurry for a second as Ava slowly opened her eyes. Then she shut them close and waited for a while before raising her eyelids. "What happened?" Ava mumbled, staring at Roland's worried expression. For a moment he said nothing as he stared at her. Then he let out a sigh of relief and said, "You fainted." A frown settled on Ava's face as she slowly sat up, glaring at Roland. Then without holding back, she raised her hand and slammed her palm against his cheek. "What did you make me do?" Ava screamed, staring wide-eyed at her shaking hand. When she gazed back at Roland, his face bore no expression, and she slowly began to panic, wondering what he was going to do to her. "If it makes you feel any better, you didn't kill him," Roland coldly said, rising from the bed. "Huh?" Ava mumbled without meeting his eyes. "I shifted the gun in another direction before it fired. But you wouldn't know that, because you fainted before it happened." "Roland, I am." The rest of her sentence got stuck in her head as she stared at Roland's expressionless face. Suddenly the door opened, and Jax walked in. Then he took a step back when Roland shot him a warning look. "I am sorry, boss. I thought you were alone," Jax mumbled, focusing on the carpet. "What is it?" Roland asked in annoyance. "Your father is here." "What does that old fox want?" "I don't know, boss." It grew silent for a second. Then Roland left the room, leaving Ava hopelessly staring behind him. Then, Jax faintly smiled at her before walking out of the room. After sitting in silence for a few seconds, Ava got off the bed and tiptoed into the hall, secretly following Roland to the study. "Boy, you got some guts," Luther coldly said the moment his gaze fell on his son. "I would say that it is nice to see you, father, but it is not. So, what do you want?" Roland replied, shutting the door behind him. However, that didn't stop Ava from leaning her right ear against its wooden frame and listening. "I have a new mission for you," Luther said, sitting on the couch. "I am not available. Find one of your yes men to do it for you," Roland said with less patience in his tone. "Right, because you have to stay here and protect your little thing. How long do you plan to babysit her, or how long do you think you can keep her safe? Call her a thing one more time, and you will be leaving here with a fresh scar." The atmosphere grew pretty tense in a flash, as Luther coldly stared at Roland. "I see. Turning against your old man for a woman. Your mother will be disappointed. Remember your promise to her," Luther said, leaning back on the couch as he crossed his leg over the other. "Yeah, me trying to keep my promise to Mom is the only reason I put up with your crap. But you were the first to break your vow, so why can't I?" Roland said, keeping his gaze fixed on his father's eyes. "I did nothing to harm you, and neither did I betray you. The girl was their target, not you. If you've been in contact with Rami, then you should know that she is not just a girl to me. She is what Mom was to you." "Shut up. You remember how deeply your love was for Mom, that you wanted to be the one dying from cancer and not her." "Well, that is how I feel when I think about losing Ava." Out of rage, Luther slammed his palm on the table, glared at his son, and said, "Don't you dare end that damn sentence. I'd rather die than allow her to get a scar." So the next time you allow 15 highly trained assassins on this island and give them access to my house, remember that your son will draw his last breath before she does." Roland casually said. It grew quiet. But the tension between Luther and his son had only worsened. "That girl," Luther said, giving his son an icy stare. "What about her?" Roland asked, paying less attention to his father's face and focusing more on the antique vase in the corner of the room. "She is the reason you prolonged your mission in Aura City, right?" "Right." The laid-back attitude Roland was exhibiting had Luther raging with anger. "That mission was a quick in-and-out job, but you took months to complete it. Now it doesn't surprise me that you did, it just enrages me," Luther coldly said, clutching his fist. "I met an amazing woman that made this cold heart of mine beat. What was I supposed to do, not fall in love with her?" Roland mumbled. "Yes. That is exactly what you should have done, boy." "Well, sorry to disappoint you, father. But the deal is done." A smile crept on Ava's lips, and she softly chuckled. Suddenly, she heard footsteps approaching her, and before she could get the chance to react, she was staring at Floral as she calmly gazed at her. "Miss." "What are you doing?" Floral mumbled, tightening her grip on the tray. "What are you doing here?" Ava whispered, staring at the teacups and biscuit. "Serving master and young master some tea." "How about you?" "Me? Well, you see, I came to speak with Roland, but I heard him talking to someone, so I was just about to leave when you came." In a rush, Ava ran past Floral and hurried down the hall. With a frown on her face, she gazed behind Ava for a moment, before attempting to knock. Then Floral heard Luther scream, "You bastard!" and Roland yelled, "Stop calling me that, especially since you are my father." Fear paralyzed her for a second. Then she drew her hand to her side and walked away. An eye for an eye. "No wonder Rami is after the girl and not me or you. He knows how much she means to you," Luther said, glaring at his son. When Roland didn't utter a word, he gazed at his son's expressionless face and said, "She is going to die because of your feelings for her. Not when I can put a stop to it," Roland said, feeling uncertain about his every word. "Son, you are just one man with thousands of enemies. Do you think that girl is safe with you? She is not safe with anyone other than me. We both know that is a lie. You can spend the rest of your life hiding her away from the world." Even though Roland hated it, he knew that his father was right. "You better let go of her before you watch her take her last breath," Luther said with a straight face. "What are you getting at?" Roland mumbled, giving his father a cold stare. "You vanish from her life once, to keep her safe from the real side of your life. You can do it again." "What do you mean?" "The world is huge. Find somewhere that no one knows her or you. Leave her there and disappear for good. I know it is cruel, but it is the only way you can keep that girl safe. Why are you telling me this?" Fixing his gaze on Roland, Luther stood from the couch and walked over to him. "Because this is a win-win situation. The girl doesn't have to die. You don't have to lose the woman you love. Well, in terms of death. And I get my killing machine back," Luther said, tapping his son on the shoulder. "Fine," Roland mumbled, taking in a deep breath. Chapter 30. Double Cross. Keeping a straight face, Ava fixed her eyes on the door as it opened. Then her sight rested on Roland, and the corners of her lips slightly raised. "I am sorry for slapping you," Ava mumbled beneath her breath as she watched him shut the door. "It is fine. I shouldn't have forced you to do something that you didn't want to do," Roland said, walking over to her. Then, when he was just a foot away from Ava, he squatted, took her hands in his, and looked into her eyes. How about we take a trip out of this place and go somewhere else for the time being until this issue with Belle can die down? Roland said as he focused solely on her gaze. Are you serious? Ava asked, striving to contain her excitement. Yes. Just you and I, well, and Jax. Yes. Widening her smile, Ava's eyes lit up as she loudly said again. Yes, I want to. Great. Grab a suitcase and get a few things that you need. We will go shopping when we get there. So don't stress over what to take, Roland said, standing up to his feet. At first, Ava felt speechless as she tried to process her thoughts while watching Roland approach his closet. After he opened the door, she finally put herself together and asked, We are leaving today. Yes, Roland said, without turning around. Another silence took over the atmosphere, and it lasted for a couple of seconds before Ava asked, Why the rush? Do you want to get out of this forsaken place? Roland asked, finally looking back to meet her eyes. Well, of course I want to, but why today and not tomorrow or the day after tomorrow? Because going today or tomorrow is the same. Not wanting to believe that there wasn't more to what Roland had said, Ava stood to her feet, swallowed down her fear and asked, I heard you and your father's conversation, and you were eavesdropping on our conversation? Roland asked as his eyes grew cold. I know you think I am taking you on this trip to abandon you, but it is not the case. So don't start acting stubborn. Taking a moment to process what Roland had said, Ava scowled at him and then shouted, You were going to abandon me again. It was Roland's turn to be speechless, because he was confused about if they were on the same page or not. How much of my father's and I conversation did you hear? Roland asked, watching her brows draw together in a frown. Does that matter? You were planning to abandon me again, you cold-hearted bosses. Ava lashed out, pausing when he gave her an icy stare. Did you just decide to take a portion of my words into consideration and disregard the rest? Well, you are not going to abandon me in a foreign country, are you? No, I am not. Facing his back to Ava, Roland took out a mini suitcase and said, It was easy to do when no one knew my connection with you. But now abandoning you in a foreign country is like sentencing you to death with my own hands. Then he laid it on the floor, opened the lid, and calmly intoned, We are going on this trip because someone wants to play dirty and I am going to give them the taste of their own medicines. What does that even mean? Ava asked, feeling a bit relieved now that she knew he wasn't going to dump her in some foreign land. It is not something that you should concern yourself with. Now, go pack your things. But, Ava, please don't argue with me right now or act stubborn. Silence fell between them, and Roland sighed as he swayed his focus on her eyes while she pouted at him. Promise me that you are going to be a good girl on this trip, Roland calmly said, knowing fully well that even if she made such a promise, she was bound to break it. Without replying, Ava walked away. But Roland called out after her, Where are you going? To pack my suitcase, Ava shouted as she walked out of the room, slamming the door behind her. What a headache, Roland mumbled, chuckling faintly. After packing his suitcase with a few things and zipping it, Roland pulled out his phone from his pocket and dialed Jax's number. Come to my room, Roland commanded, ending the call before Jax could respond. A few minutes later, the room door opened, and after Jax had walked inside, Roland looked at him and said, Let's talk. The bedroom was silent, except for the sound of Ava angrily mumbling as she stuffed her suitcase with clothes. Finally reaching her limit of anger, Ava mumbled in annoyance, Why the hell does he always keep me in the dark and have me guessing? Then she deeply inhaled and exhaled to calm herself before zipping her bag and mumbling, Done. Let's hope that he doesn't go back on his word. desert me in the middle of nowhere, and run away. It took a couple more minutes for Ava to truly calm down. Then she grabbed her suitcase handle and pulled it with her as she walked out of her room. When Ava got to Roland's door, she stopped in her tracks as it suddenly opened. Then she stared at Jax as he walked past her without saying a word. Why does he look so serious? Ava thought, staring behind him. Then, after she had snapped herself out of her head, she dragged her suitcase into the room and gazed at Roland's expressionless face. What is he up to? Ava worriedly thought as she pouted, wondering what was going on in her head. Roland stood from the bed and asked, "You packed everything that you need?" "Yes," Ava mumbled, abandoning her thoughts. "Then, it is time to leave." As Luther sat in his living room, sipping on a glass of champagne, the sound of his phone buzzed, drew his attention onto the couch. Then he picked up his phone and answered. "What is it?" "Young master is leaving the house with the girl, and they are carrying luggage with them. Also, I heard he asked to get the private jet ready for them." A female voice echoed into his ear. "Good job. Thank you, master. Your payment for this month will be doubled. Especially since you risked your life to open the door for Rami's men. Thank you so much, master." After ending the call, Luther rested his phone back on the couch, picked up his glass and took a sip of his drink. Then he withdrew the glass from his lip, smirked with a look of satisfaction in his eyes and said, "I am sorry, son, but it has to get done."